Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have things that you need to get done around your house? Maybe a new kitchen, new bathroom, or even your roof? Contact K&H Contracting. They are a local company from a person born and raised in Waxahachie, and you always want to support small business. Give them a shout out. Check them out. So today, my very special guest is Mr. Joey Vargas Zapata. This man has got a story from prison gangs, from gangs to prison to turning his life around. This man has a story of resilience. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Joey.
Thank you for having me.
I saw your post and that you had a book coming out, and I said, you know what? I love a person like that's been through some stuff, and I've had people stories of resilience on the show, and I'm just glad to have you on. So can you give me a quick bio on you?
I was born in Lajas, Puerto Rico. I moved to the United States when I was about 1 to 2 years old. So I'm a Puerto Rican descent. I'm a podcaster, um, public speaker, life coach, mentor. I do a little bit of everything.
And that is a wonderful thing, because there's so many people coming up behind us that they don't have any direction, any guidance, anything going. Now tell me, brother, how did it, you came from Lajas, Puerto Rico, you ended up going Milwaukee, I think it was, and then you got involved. How did that go, and how did the gang start?
Yeah, I was born in Lajas, Puerto Rico, and then my family relocated from Puerto Rico to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a better life, better jobs and opportunity, things like that. So my grandfather and my family we moved to Milwaukee. So I was living in bad neighborhoods in Milwaukee, Wisconsin as I was young and as I got older. My parents trying to influence and teach us with biblical teachings. We used to play. I'm the oldest from my siblings. I'm the oldest for three brothers and two sisters. So we was raised in church. My parents tried to teach us the biblical teachings. We used to be in church playing instruments and God and things like that. As I got older, I used to see the environment in the streets, gangs and drugs. I had family members that was involved in drugs and gangs. And my father at the time, before he started going to church, he was involved with the Latin Eagles back in the days in Milwaukee. So as I grew older, we was in church. My father, I don't know what happened to him. He was going through some kind of transition. He went through a lot. He started using drugs and abusing drugs, especially alcohol. So growing up, I had a bad relationship with my father because we really bump heads. He used to talk crazy to my mother. He ended up putting hands on my mother. I remember a night we used to sleep on the second floor. I'm the oldest, so all of my siblings were sleeping. So I heard loud noises, screaming and yelling. And then once you hear your mother yelling, something ain't right. So I
Right.
walked down the stairs in the middle. It was like 2, 3 in the morning. I remember like it was yesterday. I walked down the stairs. I sit down like in the middle of the stairs, and I seen everything play out like a movie. I see my father put hands on my mother. I see my mother bleeding. I see my mother crying, yelling and screaming. Why am I going through this? Why are we going through this? I see my father just going buck wild. And I understood at that time that once you're under the influence, it's not you anymore. The drugs and the alcohol, and I believe in God, so I believe it has to do with spiritual. The enemy took control. My father at that time, we bumped heads and we fought back and forth, and so when I started going to school, I couldn't concentrate. I had issue with trauma, childhood trauma. I couldn't concentrate in school. I started doing bad, skipping, smoking cigarettes in middle school. I couldn't concentrate because I was thinking, okay, I'm going through all this at home. Nobody know what I'm going through. I can't concentrate in school. So I started getting involved in the streets little by little.
And gangs followed. Tell me about that, because what I saw when I was growing up and involved in gangs, a lot of the dudes that I was hanging out with that were involved in it, they had them broken families and maybe not a lot of love. Now, I had plenty of love from my mom. My dad, he passed early, and that was a whole bunch of issues with that, but he passed early. but I saw a lot of them looking for family. Now I could realize that as a grown adult, but when I was in there, I couldn't see it. But we all became like a family. So yeah,
Mhm,
we were
mhm,
doing a lot of stupid things, but there was nobody I was close to, these dudes, and they felt that for
mhm,
me. And so it
mhm.
became a family in a weird, twisted way. And was that how you felt you were trying to get family?
Yeah, I feel like that because at the same time, me being the oldest, I never had a big brother. So I never had nobody teach me how to do certain things or how to live life or the streets or how to grow up and be a man. You know what I mean? Because me and my father didn't really have that type of relationship. So going to school or kicking it with friends in the street that was involved with gangs, you have certain conversation that you can relate. So since we started relating with each other with our childhood traumas and things that we're going through, that's what started pulling me in the gang life. So we started kicking it. We started embracing that brotherly love, that so-called family. Once they tell you at first, and then I started kicking it. Now I have family members that was really well known in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the gang. So me being the oldest nephew, the oldest sibling in the family, when they found out I got involved, they didn't like it. But at the same time, they couldn't stop me because I was out here wild. So I'm like, I didn't want to go home anymore for the simple fact I have to deal with my father being drunk. I got to deal with my father putting hands on my mother, on my siblings. At time, I felt like I was the hero of the family. I had to go and stop him from hitting my brothers and sisters or my mother. So that's what made me go to the streets. So I was actually running from my trauma, running from my situation, and just going to the streets thinking that was going to make me a better person. That was going to help me because I felt this so-called love as a family when it came to the gangs and the streets and the street violence and all that gang violence and everything. So I started getting involved. I got deep. How they say in the streets, I was out here putting crazy work. I was ignorant. I was blind at the time. The enemy just took over me, and I was running crazy in the street just because I didn't want to go home and deal with my father. So that's how everything started.
And then you had one of the things that happened with that when you're growing up in that environment is PTSD shows itself in many different ways. And then when
Mhm,
you're going through that childhood trauma, the symptom
mhm,
that comes out of it is anger. And
mhm.
tell me, how did the streets feed that anger or satisfy that need to quell that anger?
When I got really involved with the streets, there's levels to it. And the amount of years that I was involved with the gangs, I started escalating that ladder quickly because of my anger, my rebellion. I rebelled against my father, and I was mad and pissed off at my father. So when we had guns and drugs, we was out here shooting everything that was moving, right? So with that anger, it actually made me a really lost individual. I got lost in my own pain, my suffering, my ignorance, because everything that I was holding inside of me towards my father, I used it in the streets, and it created chaos to the point where I caught some charges. I fought some
I was going to
charges.
ask you about that.
Some got
I was going to
dropped, and
ask you, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
How and talk to me about that, because that inevitably what happens is you run into charges. I did, and you did too. So how did you run into that? Was it they caught you with something and then did it escalate from there?
So the first time they caught me, it wasn't nothing much. It was a misdemeanor. They caught me with little small pipe and weed residue and gave me a misdemeanor. I got probation, but as I started escalating, they was watching us for a couple of years, and the state got me for a shooting case. So we was fighting that shooting case, but what happened was they found a shell casing in between the back seats that I wasn't able to see. So that's how they charged me for the state case because they found that showcasing, and I was fighting that case, and they gave me the state time. While I was in there fighting my state, I finally bailed out. Once I bailed out, the feds came and got me and charged me for a conspiracy. It was a whole group of us.
Wow.
It
And
was like back to back.
you couldn't buy a break there. Now, how long did
No,
you end up getting? Like when you go through a trial with the feds, that's it.
mm,
You
mm,
can't outspend them, so
right.
you pretty much go from there. So you show up. What prison did they send you first?
They sent me to a prison in Illinois, and then I did state time. But what happened was, since I got charged with the state, what they did was ran it concurrent. So since it was my first offense, and I got it back to back, the state judge blessed me and ran it concurrent. So what the federal judge did, since I didn't really have a background like that, they ran it concurrent. So I did 5 years in prison, and then I did 4 years on papers. So I did
Yeah.
the state time, the fed time ran with it, and then whatever I had left, I did that, and then from there they sent me to a halfway house.
Wow, man, and that is a blessing to be able to do it concurrent. Tell me about your life in there, because there's something about being in there that people don't understand. After they see, oh, he's convicted, the prison is a very far place from the average person, and what happens in prisons is a very far place from the average person. I understand it. Tell me about your life when you got in there.
When my state case started, with my state case, like I said, they found that showcasing, so I took a plea. I want to take it to trial since they found the showcasing. For the feds, they didn't catch me with anything. Just because certain people said certain things, there was a conspiracy. So just by having a conspiracy, they automatically could give you time for that. That's what happened to me. So I was pissed and frustrated because my first time going to prison, I caught two cases back to back. I was out here wild, and I'm like, they didn't catch me with anything. But as long as somebody say something, that's all they need.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to prison at first. When you go to prison, in prison they know you coming before you get there, right? So they got your name, they got your information, they got your packet, they know what you're in there for, they know what kind of charge you got. Once you in there, they already know who you are, what organization you from when it comes to gang banging. So once I came in, they told me, okay, over there's your group. You got to go with your group. At first, you got to stand on your 10 toes when you're in prison, especially when you're involved in gang. You can't go in there thinking you finna run everything because it's they'll lay you down real quickly. They don't play that. It's nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing to play with,
You'll find
And
out you're
then
not the
people,
toughest dude there. You'll find out real
yeah,
quick.
most definitely. And the people don't understand when you go to prison. There's a lot of structure. There's no nonsense. There's no craziness, and the way that everything is structured. If something's going to happen, somebody sent it to so it could happen. The word
Hmm.
went out. And nothing happens. Yeah, nothing happens unless the big boys know about it from every gangs or a group they got in there. So I went in there when I was frustrated. I was pissed. I didn't want to know nothing about nobody. I just kept to myself, and I kicked it with the guys in there. One of the persons who had it for the prison was getting released. He was an old school guy that he knew my family, my background. So he got released. Finding out after he got released, not even a year, he passed away, drug overdose. And I'm like, this guy was here. I got to know him. I spent time with him. He was like family. He got released, not even a year. They sent word that he died because of drug overdose. I'm like, this is crazy, man. He was an
Yeah.
old school guy, but he wasn't really that old either. I'm like, man. So I went in and certain things escalated, certain things happened that they gave me the chair and I had it for the insane Spanish Cobras and that joint in Wisconsin while I was doing my time there. There was a process, man. It was a lot of investigations. There was a lot of times going to the hole, solitary confinement. Every time lieutenants and then the white shirts want to investigate, all they got to do is just kick us out the room, take us to the hole, and have us there for a certain amount of time, 14 days. And then what they do, they'll keep extending it until somebody talks to say something. Nobody never talked. So we were just basically in and out, man, for a long time. We did 6 months. We did a little bit more than 6 months. They release us. They come pick us up again because they're rumors and whatever. And so I did a lot of time solitary confinement that impacted me a lot as well.
Now, the what people, if you don't understand the SHU or special housing unit, solitary confinement, that's the jail within the jail. That is the place where they put you on timeout when things happen in the yard. It's a control slash punishment thing. And now there's a lot of studies coming out now that say that is very bad for your mental health because you're in this box for 23 out of 24 hours a
Mm-hmm.
day. You get 1
Mm-hmm.
hour out there, maybe, and that depends on how long it takes to shift people. It takes, is the staff busy? There's a bunch of things that go in that. You get your how you get fed. There, everything is becomes even more intense when you're there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in that environment. Was that the environment that told you, hey, this is it, this is where I can't keep doing this?
See, the thing with me, when I was smaller, I always had a caller. Every time my grandmother invited me to church or family members invited me to church or I visit, there was always somebody that I didn't know that always came up to me and said, "Listen, God has a purpose. God has a calling. God has a calling for you to evangelize. So you can go out there and preach the gospel and your testimony, share your story. That's going to impact a lot of people for the kingdom and so forth." So this been happening for years. Now, being in solitary confinement in the state and also in the feds in the shoot was because the same thing. Gang gang investigations, something that was happening. We just back and forth. But at first in the state, it hit me because the first couple of days or weeks, it's nothing. It's like I'll be out. It's not gonna be no issue. They'll give you a Bible, probably a little notepad with a little small pencil. And I was stuck in that four walls, right? You couldn't talk to nobody. And if you did, and if you got lucky, there was these vents in some of these cells where some of them you could say something and then other inmates will be able to hear and you could have some kind of conversation through the vents, right? Being there every day, I started getting frustrated. All this negativity started coming upon you, your suicidal thoughts, negative thoughts, depression, anxiety. Can you by yourself? So you talking to yourself on a regular basis for a month, 2 months, 3 months, to the point that people actually think that you start going insane, right? Because you there by yourself. So I started reading
Mm-hmm.
the Bible. I started speaking to God. I started having conversation, having a relationship with God, and say, God, okay, what's your purpose? Why am I here? And it came to the point where I analyzed myself and I realized that I was there for a reason. I was there for a purpose. I couldn't run. I couldn't go nowhere. I felt like the solitary confinement for me was a place where God was going to work with me. Was God's
Ooh.
gonna, I got you here. I'm gonna take you out the streets. I'm gonna put you in prison, but you still being hard headed, still having
Yeah.
gang activities, still involved with things you ain't supposed to be involved in. So since you're not listening, now I'm gonna put you in this box where you ain't gonna be able to move. You ain't gonna be able to talk to anybody but me.
Oh, wow.
Man, listen,
Man, that's powerful.
listen. So there was days where I started hearing voices in there, but it wasn't voices telling me to do negative things. There was voices like trying to have a conversation with me. And at first I thought I was going insane. And I used to go to the vent and talk to the next inmate and say, "Hey, you guys hear this? You guys hear that?" They're like, "No." And I'm thinking to my mom, like, I'm going insane. Then I start praying and I start waking up 2 or 3 in the morning. I start waking up out of nowhere, same time every day. I'm like, I think God want me to talk to him. I couldn't ignore him. So I had got on my knees. I started praying. I broke down, started crying, and I'm like, look, man, when you're in prison, it's really difficult to show your emotions. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to. Prison is a
Yeah.
place where you have to take all of your emotions and you got to keep them in. You can't show nobody that you're soft. You can't show nobody that you ain't about that life. If you was
Mm-hmm.
involved in this in the streets in prison, you got to keep doing what you were doing out there. You can't be looking like you ain't nobody like you saw. No, ain't none of that. But in solitary confinement, I was able to break down. See, solitary confinement gave me opportunity to express myself to God in a way that I didn't before. So
Yeah.
I had an experience with God being
God,
in the hole.
what I've seen is God comes to you in the darkest places. He did
He
for me.
does.
He pulled me out of the darkest hole that I had ever been in, and he pulled me out and he saved me. There's no other word
Amen.
for it. He saved me.
Amen.
I begged him, and that's why your story touched me, because I begged him to
Amen.
show me my purpose and
Amen.
help me go
Absolutely.
forward, and he did.
Absolutely.
And I said, you
Mhm.
know what? If you do, God, I
Mhm.
swear I will never turn from you again. And I
Mhm.
never have.
Mhm.
And I never will. So he comes to you in this place, in this darkest place, and you're having conversations with God. And I know you sometimes some people might think, oh wow, whatever. God puts things in your heart. And if you're smart, you're listening and you're receiving. When
Mhm.
you're in that position where you were as open to receiving God as you can be. So tell me, what was he telling you about purpose? And where did that when the doors opened and they said, okay, you're done with shoe, where did you go?
So all of my years of my life, when everybody came and spoke to me and gave me a word from God, that all came back to me. That all played out when I was in Hope. I remember people saying certain specific things, and it just came to me, and I started remembering. Every time I went to sleep, I used to have dreams, and when I used to sit down and read the Bible, it was like visions. It was like a vision of basically everything everybody told me is like a movie. I see myself on stage. I see myself preaching. I see myself doing a lot of things in the streets for the community, like outreach, evangelism, and things like that. And I kept asking God, you need to show me. Show me what you want me to do. Show me what you want me to do because I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of suffering. I'm tired of keep I have every day. I got to keep looking behind my back. I don't trust anybody. You know what I mean? My stepbrother was murdered in the streets, daylight to this day. Nobody know who did it. People don't want to talk. I have a cousin that was murdered. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time and got murdered. I have cousins who done committed suicide before. Me and my family and I, we've been through so much. So all of that came to me at that time. So with these visions and these dreams and all it did was confirm what everybody told me what God wanted me to do. So when I came out the hole in the state, and I was at the state at this time, I came out the hole. I was listening and I was reading the Bible more, but at the same time, you still in prison, and I still got the chair. I'm still responsible for certain things that goes on in prison when it came to the Spanish Cobras or whatnot, the Latin folks. And I still had to do what I had to do. But if my mom like, God, I don't want to keep doing this. I sat down and coached a couple of people and mentor a couple of inmates that was going through a lot and some younger ones. And from there on, I ended up went to the feds. I only had a little bit of time left. So what happened was in my background when I went to the state, there were all kind of crazy things that I had it for that prison or whatever. So all that paperwork was transferred to the feds. So they had that. When I went to the feds, you got to walk in twos. See, in the state, it's not like that. In the
Mm-hmm.
feds, you can't walk by yourself. In the feds, you got to walk with one of the other guys. Me, I was being hard headed. My first time in the feds, I'm thinking, okay, it's just like the state. It's sweet. I'm good. No, it wasn't like that. You got They caught me slipping. I got into it. All the guys was mad because like you ain't supposed to be walking around here by yourself because everybody at war. At
Mm-hmm.
that time, and I found out the hard way. So they locked us up, or me and some of the other guys, and because the gang activities or whatever for investigation, and they wanted people to talk, but since I didn't want to talk, they kept messing with me. They kept bringing my background. You can't, the lieutenant, the white shirts, you come to the door, be like, okay, since you don't want to talk, I'm gonna push you. You finna get released soon, so I'm gonna leave you here till you get released. I was putting grievances and doing all of that. It wasn't working. They wasn't doing nothing for me. Trying to speak to the chaplain, trying to speak to the counselor, with nobody helping me. I'm like, God, what's going on? I'm in the shoe. I'm in the hole again, but in the shoe in the feds. The same thing that happened in the state I'm going through, but in the feds. And I'm asking God again. I'm like, man, why am I here? And the feds is different because in the feds, they got the showers they got the showers right in the cell. You know what I mean? They
Mm-hmm.
might let you go out for a little walk around in that little spot for the little wreck, but you shower in there and then you sleep in there. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
got to shower, you got to clean
they
it.
don't pull you out for showers. They don't. It's a rec
Man,
thing, and then rec for those that you
uh,
don't. It's not a big area when you're in the special housing unit. It's actually a small little cage. It literally is a
even
cage
worse.
that get in
Yeah.
there and they just do circles, and that of course depends on where you're at, but it is not comfortable. But you kept fighting God, and now you find
I
yourself in the show, in the shoe. Talk to me about
again
that.
find myself again. I'm like, I'm thinking I'm gonna be out here and finish my time out here with the guys, and this had a celly in the shoe. The celly, he was Muslim, and then he started talking to me. He said, "Bro," he said, "you believe in God?" Yeah. And he started talking to me about Allah, whatever. And so I'm talking to him about God, and he said something. He said, "Man, listen." He said, "Listen, bro, you probably in here. You probably in here for a reason." And I'm like, "Here we go again." I'm thinking what happened in the state. I'm like, I'm about to do the same thing again in the feds. And basically, I was being hard headed because when I got released from the solitary confinement in the state, I went back to the same thing because I had it for the prison. So I was still believing in God and talking to God, but at the same time, I was one foot in, one foot out. So in the shoe, I finished my time there. I didn't have a lot of time left, so they left me there. So I had this Muslim celly for, man, it was more than 6 months, and it came to the point where I started speaking to God, and I gave myself to God, and I said, "This is it. I'm done." I basically went through the same thing I went through the state. God kept revealing stuff to me. So once I got released, went to the halfway house, and I believe that my mission started, my vision. I got to start doing speaking engagements. I got to start working with the youth, the outreach, start my ministry, and things like that. So that's when I got released. Everything started unfolding.
Now you get out to the streets, and that transition, even with a halfway house, is a difficult transition to get out there.
Yes, it
And
is.
people already have a preconceived notion of you as soon as they see you. So you're dealing with a lot of different things when you come out of there, and then you go, you want to do stuff for God, and you want to start reaching out people. Where did you go first, and did you get tied up with a church and working with them? How did that came along where you started at podcasting, mentoring, talking to people? How did you bring that about?
I know a lot of people in Wisconsin. So I'm connected with a lot of people in Milwaukee, pastors, and a little bit of everybody, evangelists and things like that. So I started calling them and asking them for guidance, and because they have a lot of experience pastoring and doing things like that. And I had conversations with my first pastor as well. And I connected with different churches. I connected with different places in Pennsylvania. And I started going out summertime. I basically put myself out there. I promoted myself when it came to speaking engagements, to talking to the kids. I see the whole group playing basketball. I go over there, start talking to them, and that's how everything starts. Because once they hear my story, they can relate. They either got a cousin that got killed, or they got a brother that's doing life in prison, or they got family members that's selling drugs. And by me sharing my story, that's how everything started, unfolded little by little. That's how I started doing my podcast and going around and doing the outreach and speaking to these kids and mentoring in PA. But one of the things that still to this day motivates me is that when I was in the shoe, I was in the shoe, and this kid comes in. Believe he's about 18 or 19 years old. He's native, he's Indian,
Yeah.
young. He comes in, he started yelling in the cell out the door, yelling, going crazy. I guess he got a lot of years. I don't know what for. He got a lot of years. It's the first time he started crying, yelling out the door, I need help. I don't know what to do. He's gonna kill himself. It was crazy. Me and the other guys try to yell out the cell, try to have a conversation with him so he could try to calm down and trying to be positive. Because once you're in solitary confinement, you're in the shoot, you're here trying to have certain conversations with certain inmates. So basically, everybody pushing each other and motivating each other because it's not easy once you went in solitary confinement for so long. And a lot of these guards don't care, to be honest. You in prison, they treat you like you ain't worth anything.
Mm.
There's a few they'll treat you like you're a human being, but a lot of them guards really don't care, especially in the feds. They just laugh at you, keep moving, right? So the next morning we wake up, and then one of the guys try to say something to me because when you have conversations, a lot of times they make these little they write on paper, they tie it up, they'll put it with some strings, and they'll fish it to the next cell. You know what I mean? That's how they
Hmm.
have a lot of other conversation as well. They was like, "Hey, bro, what happened to that kid? He's quiet. He ain't say nothing. You think he good?" I'm like, "I don't even know." Coming to find out, the guards was yelling. They ran to the cell, and this kid committed suicide.
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it, but he hung himself. About
Yeah.
18, 19 years old, and today remember that like it was yesterday. Now, what broke me was that I try to have a conversation the day before, try to help him out, right? Give him some kind of guidance. Me and the other guys in there. But what broke me was that the guards went and covered all of the windows. They had some kind of paper. They covered all of the windows. We heard the guards take this kid out the cell, laughing. The guards was laughing at this kid, calling him an idiot, stupid, even worse, laughing. Right? Why you kill yourself? You stupid. Now we can't see, but we can hear them dragging the kid out the cell down the hallway. They dragging him down all the way down the hallway. You can hear them dragging with the keys, the guards' keys, and dragging them. And these guards, we listen to these guards just laughing at this kid, man. And I'm like, see, people don't know prison is no joke. A lot of these youngins don't understand it. A lot of these people in prison don't care about you. You ain't nothing but a number. That's all it is. That's
Yeah.
one of the things that to this day motivate me, man, and keep me moving. Try to tell these youngins, man, listen, that's not where it's at. This ain't for you. This
That
ain't
is
this
in your
this ain't
life.
yeah, this ain't for us.
That ain't your life. Now I'm gonna go back because we're coming close to the end of the time, but I'm really enjoying our conversation. But I'm gonna go back a little bit. There was
Mhm.
somebody at the beginning of this story that you had to protect and that loved you, and that was your mother. What ended up happening with her? Did she get to see you find God and try to help others?
Yeah, yeah. I still talk to my mother. I still do talk to my father. We don't have a great relationship. But as you get older, you mature, you understand that it wasn't him. It wasn't him acting like that. He was under the influence, and the enemy just took over him all them years back then. And he realized that now. I speak to my mother. We in contact. She's grateful that she don't got to be suffering anymore, crying every night, just thinking, am I going to come home alive? Or is she going to receive a phone call? So I still speak to both of my parents. My mother remarried. My father just he's doing him right now, just living life, and my mother remarried and living life. I just thank God I still have my parents, and like I tell them, every time I tell my story and I go around and do speaking engagement, I tell them my story is not to bring any negative thoughts or negative anything to anybody. It's basically my story is going to help others that are actually going through the same thing that I went through. Yeah.
I love that because I do tell my story of how God saved me, and I don't have any
Mm-hmm.
qualms telling that story, and it's
Mm-hmm.
brutal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay because it's not about me. It's about how God helped me. It's a beautiful story that He weaved together, and I
Mm-hmm.
needed some
Mm-hmm.
sense to understand that He was the one weaving. But before I give you the last word, like I do with all my guests on the show, you're doing a book.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell me more about that? Or are you going to put it out on Amazon? How could people get this book? Tell me about the book.
Now the book is called the Power of Resilience, Saved by God's Grace. It was supposed to come out in December because the holidays and a lot of things going on. They told me they pushed it back a little bit. So I believe sometimes in January or February. So we talking about that right now. It's going to get released hopefully the beginning of next year. So this is a book that talks about highlight some of my story and at the same time any teenagers to adult can read it and it has a life skills, coping skills. It talks about everything. It's a book that you could read overall and that can help you when it comes to life experiences and to motivate you, inspire, empower, things like that.
That's awesome. I had his link tree on there. You can pull him up. He's got his podcast and everything. But on my show, I always give my guest the last word. So go ahead and speak to my audience.
So my mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower everyone who listens. We all go through struggles. We all go through childhood traumas. We all have the suicidal thoughts. We all have these depression, these negative thoughts, and a lot of times we keep these thoughts bottled inside, and we don't show it. We don't speak to nobody. And when we go through the storms or we go through certain obstacles, a lot of times we don't know how to express it. So that it ends up killing ourselves. It ends up killing ourselves little by little. You know what I mean? I look at myself as the voice of the voiceless. I'm that voice of all the children that's getting abused every day, and they don't have nobody to go to talk to cry to. I'm the voice of all the women who's dealing with domestic abuse, who to this day don't tell anybody because they're scared if they're gonna live for tomorrow. I'm the voice for all of those that are incarcerated. They are struggling. They are fighting with suicidal thoughts. We're fighting with depression. They feel like they can't take it anymore. I'm a voice for all of those that are not able to speak and express themselves and let people know that they try and they feel as if they can't be able to keep battling life. Life ain't easy. Life is hard. But if you're still breathing, like I always say, God will help you. God will sustain you. God will console you. God will transform you. God will heal all your wounds. Call unto God, and God will be there for you. He did it for me. I'm a living testimony of that. And I believe God will do great things for you as well.
Amen to that. He has. And like I told you when we first got on, I told you I love you. And I said that because I know that the journey that you had was so difficult. And I have my version of my story and you got yours, but it both
Hmm.
is beautiful because God had something to do with it.
Amen.
Even when we didn't think he was there,
Most
and
definitely.
God was the one who brought us both out of that. So I'm proud of you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, my brother. Can you stick around real quick after the show?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.